All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. As always, today we're going to talk about the NFC playoff games in Wild Card weekend, and we're also going to break down the Super Bowl MVP market. Drew, I did not watch the college national championship game last night. I was watching Knicks-Bucs and then Nuggets-Lakers as Nikola Jokic continues his surge towards a third MVP. What did you make of Georgia TCU?
Oh boy, TCU came in with an incredible game plan. In no way. That was awful. No, I thought Dykes was going to at least give us a game effort there, but the defense completely no-showed. Georgia, I thought, was very sharp. Obviously, like everything that they tried to do offensively worked. That was a complete and total runaway. The free 7 points TCU gave them, or I guess 14 points inside the 2-minute warning to end the first half, basically put the game on ice. The broadcast itself was a rough hang. A lot of commercials, a long halftime. Not exactly how I would want to kind of, ride people off into the sunset of the college football product, but it is what it is. Congratulations to Georgia. They were clearly the best team of those two that played last night. So congratulations on a national championship. And it's a good enough unit and a good enough program that they're going to be back, I'm sure. And I was like you, after losing an underplay that was pretty substantial for me, I was chasing away after I saw the Lakers starting lineup. Bombs away on the Lakers team total under 112 as try to get back there. And then I was up late, sweating every basket in that fourth quarter as they landed 109. So it did come in under, but it was by the narrowest of margins. So that was a wild night. Ultimately, congratulations to Georgia, everyone who backed Georgia. If you laid the points with Georgia, you had a sweat-free winner. Interesting, kind of right at the window, people were just all the way in on Georgia minus 13 and a half. A lot of professional money hit that late. So they had the read and they were correct.
Yes, I'm always going to walk with a limp from my Ohio State 35-1 national championship ticket going down. I will always see Ryan Day in my nightmares. Thanks for playing for a 50-yard field goal from first down on the 31 or whatever. That was a great decision. I'm sure you feel good today. Yeah, my only feedback on Georgia TCU is that Jalen Brunson scored 44 points last night. Unfortunately, though, my 121 Jalen Brunson most improved player ticket is still, I think, dead in the water.
Yeah,
because Laurie Martin, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, and Tyrese Halliburton are all out of their minds. I don't know why Markkanen isn't favorite in that award. To be honest, he's improved his points per game by 10, and by EPM is the 9th best player in the NBA at the moment, better than Giannis.
Wow.
But anyway, it's for another podcast. Let's talk about Seahawks-Niners. The line here is Niners minus 10. The total is 43. This to me feels like, I guess, the cleanest line. It just, to me, it makes sense. It should be 10 on the dot. I don't have a huge lean on this one. I think the most interesting aspect of this game is figuring out if there's something wrong with the Niners' pass defense, which quietly, I mean, the Arizona game, you kind of have to throw it out. Yes, they started poorly there, but that wasn't a real NFL team with the great David Blau at quarterback. But they were dreadful against the Raiders, and then also were giving up 3rd and longs for fun against Taylor Heineke the week before. Any concerns around the Niners defense, or is that just kind of a typical kind of late season looking forward to the
a little bit? Certainly the pass defense. They can be passed on. Some of those young players, Hufanga notably, slipping a little bit lately. He can be exposed. And you got a healthy set of weapons here with the Seahawks now coming in. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, able to stretch the field. Certainly, if Geno Smith has a good game here, he's going to be able to score points, and then it's going to be incumbent upon Brock Purdy to avoid the playoff debutante stinker. Jay, you know what they say. It's tough to beat a team 3 times, and the Seahawks have lost decisively twice. So the question is, are they going to lose decisively a 3rd time here? I think this is going to be a competitive game, ultimately. You're getting good news generally with the Seahawks from an injury standpoint. The only question mark really that existed was Ryan Neal, who matters a lot. Yes. And signs are pointing positively, at least what Pete Carroll was saying yesterday, it's going to be a tough road this week, but he expects him to go. So I think, if Ryan Neal is available, all of a sudden, you have enough pieces defensively if they can play up in this game and give you just in general a reasonable effort. My gut reaction to seeing the opener was like 10 was perfect, and I thought the total was a little low. I was inclined to look for Niners team total over as my first look on this game, but now getting information on the Seahawks defense, thinking a little bit about the debutante experience for Brock Purdy, there's a lot. There's a lot of questions really about the Niners, skill position players in terms of role responsibility, health outside of George Kittle. So I think this could be a competitive game, and I'm probably going to end up taking the points with Seattle. I don't think there's really any reason to run to the window and take the 10. I don't think this moves to 9.5. I doubt it moves to 10.5. I think this sits at 10 all week. You can have 10 on game day, would be my guess, which is maybe a good reason not to bet it at all. But that said, I think, I think this is going to be a competitive game.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fair adjustment from San Francisco -3 in Seattle, which is what it was back in week 15, which is not that long ago. And I think that the market's shifting. And I mean, Seattle's got a fairly similar health situation if Ryan Neal's going to play to that game. But this is just a reflection on Brock Purdy apparently being legitimate. And I mean, the offense has gotten better since moving to Purdy. Now, a lot of that is small sample and playing the Raiders defense and the Cardinals, not caring about that game and all of that. But at the same time, the offense is still humming, and they're just a weird team to think about, the Niners, because of the nature of the quarterback position and what they've gone through, where on one hand, if you look at their offensive production and what they've done defensively over the course of the season, it's like, is this just the best team in football by a meaningful stretch? And then on the other hand, you think like, well, unfortunately, I've watched basically every snap Brock Purdy has played, and I've seen all the interceptions and the drop pick sixes and the times bailed out. And
there's a lot of them.
Ultimately, you just land where the market has, where they're probably the third or fourth best team in the NFL, but hugely high variance where they can absolutely beat everyone. And also, I feel that, Purdy probably has it in him to lose to the Vikings as well. That wouldn't be absolutely shocking. So, I think the market has it right on this game. And if I had a play, it would be the over.
Okay. Final thought real quick. It's been a very emotional season with the Seahawks in this podcast, me personally. We had highs, we had lows. I don't think deserve to be here. This should be the Lions spot. But all said and done, Shane Waldron has done a very, very admirable job of crafting an offense that takes advantage of, certain mismatches. And as we mentioned, yes, the pass rush for the Niners defense is all universe. Nick Bosa is the best defensive player in football right now. There's not a lot of, ways you can ding those guys, but outside of Shavarius Ward, they don't have real outstanding coverage. And so I think this kind of comes down to, can you get your tight ends involved? Can you get your running backs involved in a plus EV way through the air here? Because DK Metcalf probably not going to have a huge game, but Tyler Lockett should be able to, to find a lot of opportunities in this one. So banking a little bit here on the Shane Waldron experience, keeping this competitive, and assuming Brock Purdy comes through this one unscathed, and the team kind of carries him across the finish line here, then you're thinking Super Bowl for this Niners team. Because I really, if you can kind of avoid him playing you out of the playoffs in his first ever playoff game, then I think you have clearly the best team in the NFC.
Yep. I do think as a 10-point dog, I guess maybe the Seahawks are a bit more live than most to actually win this game. Just there is a fair bit of high variance at both quarterback positions. I mean, maybe Geno's lost that just because he's been bad for 2 months, but still, he is a pretty high variance quarterback in that he makes all the throws, Geno, and the dime touchdown that he threw to Tyler Lockett was as good a pass as anyone has thrown in the NFL this year. And then he also just throws 2 absolutely brain-dead picks. And then on the other side, Purdy as well makes all the throws and then also just has inexplicable mistakes. So I do think that, it's not, there are other big lines on the boards. I don't think, for instance, that the Dolphins, as a similarly priced underdog, are as live against the Bills as
Great
the Seahawks
point.
might be against
Great point.
the Niners. All right. before we get into Giants-Vikings. Just a reminder, if you don't have the NBC Sports Predictor app, go download it now. The contests are free and easy to play. And you have a shot to win thousands this weekend by predicting what will happen during the wild card round and in the Premier League, including 2 shots at $100,000 by guessing the outcome in our Sunday Night 7 contest between the Chargers and Jags, as well as the Ravens and Bengals. All right, stay in the NFC. Let's talk about Giants-Vikings. Line here is bouncing around a little bit between 2.5 and 3, with the Vikings favored. Total of 48.5. What's your read on this one?
Perfect number. There are a handful of games every season where you simulate the outcome and you have a bright giant modal spike at the favorite winning by 3, the home favorite winning by 3. This is one of those games. I honestly, like, I can't stress this enough. Like, it's such a high expectation outcome that if this moves off of 3 in either direction, I have a plus EV bet, which is, it's fun. I mean, that's a fun way to just watch this market. I don't think that realistically the Vikings should be favored by more than 3 over anyone in this field. And I don't think you can necessarily expect the Giants to be in the game that would warrant them 2.5-point dogs. So I'm watching this one closely. I tried to get 2.5 on the opener. Didn't get a fill at all. So I don't think it's going back down. If anything, this may go to Minnesota minus 3.5 if people talk themselves into the Vikings, because this is Daniel Jones's first ever playoff game. But if that happens, then I'm going to be backing the Giants at 3.5. So Vikings, I think, ultimately are a team that you cannot trust to do anything in this playoffs at all. That said, beating a team at home that has this little talent and has this little experience in the playoffs is a reasonable expectation. I think my gut feeling was to play an over here on the opener, just because of what we saw in the first matchup between these two, where it felt like points were left on the field and that total closed in the same range. But the more I study that game and the more I think about just sort of the flukiness and sort of the second, familiarity between opponents, combined with some of the injuries, particularly on the Viking side of the ball with the offensive line, the less I'm inclined to bet this over. So I think total probably, if anything, now at 48.5 is a little too high. And I would expect that, I'm either no action whatsoever on this game, or I'm taking plus 3.5 with the Giants if we see it.
Yep. I think the Giants, there is a little bit of upside on their defense where we haven't really seen them healthy all season. But now I think with Adoree Jackson, who looks like he's going to come back and he's their best cornerback pretty comfortably. Kayvon Thibodeau continues to look better each week since he's got his injury early in the season. Then you've already got Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams, and you've got I was going to call him Weston McKinney, but he plays for Juventus. Coming back at safety alongside Julian Love. So I do think there is talent on this defense. I think that pass rush against the banged up Minnesota offensive line, I think that is the main reason why it was Minnesota minus 4.5 a few weeks ago, and now same team, same location is down to minus 3. I don't think that's so much. Vikings got destroyed by the Packers, but that was a very wonky game with some strange turnovers. And then the Giants, congratulations, they blew out Jeff Saturday's Colts and then sat everyone. So I do think it is the line movement there is more about Minnesota's injury situation, which is a bit of a concern. Do you think that either of these teams have any upside to do anything against San Francisco or Philadelphia?
No, winners drawing dead in round 2. And to that point, I think we as bettors should root for one of these teams to look really good. Like, if one of these teams has their best week of the season, that'd be fine. I'd be fired up by that, because any kind of upward correction coming out of this game, I think would be short-sighted. Recency bias, and would bet against the team in the next round. So yeah, I don't see any positive matchups for the Vikings against the likes of the Niners, if that's their matchup in the 2-3. If the Vikings are hosting whoever wins the 4-5 matchup, I'm going to be pretty excited to bet either the Cowboys or the Bucs in that road spot. That'll be a really interesting handicap and a really fun one. So I'm not saying I want the Niners to lose to the Seahawks. It would, if it happens, it's it'll make for a fun second round handicap. But I think either of these teams is effectively drawing dead in the next round. And you don't need any more evidence of Giants versus Eagles and how that plays out. We've seen that enough, I think.
Yeah, I don't think whatever happens, I don't think there's any chance that the market is going to buy the New York Giants. I think there is a chance that it might buy the Minnesota Vikings a little bit. And it's weird to say this about a team that won. They ended up winning 13 games. That's insane. We'd say this about a team that won 13 games, but I do think the Vikings are better than they've shown this season because they probably played it. They should have been a 9-8 team or 10-7, but I think that they have upside and they have talent that goes beyond what they put out on the field and that should exceed their market rating. When you look at the talent on the roster, like, why isn't this offense better? Like, this offense, even now the offensive line is screwed up, but prior to that, like, this team had a good offensive line. TJ Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, the resurgent KJ Osborne, like Kirk. I don't understand why this offense hasn't been a top 7 unit all season. But at this point, it is what it is. I think they're probably going to figure out some things with their scheme.
Yeah, I realistically, the offense, there are a lot of overrated pieces. I think Thielen's well past his prime. Dalvin Cook has taken a massive step back this season. Dalvin Cook is not the game breaker he was even last year, let alone 2 seasons ago. And Kirk Cousins, his ceiling is like top 10 quarterback, and his floor is like top 15. So he's coming in a very narrow range, but he's never really going to elevate all the pieces on the field. Outside of Justin Jefferson, they really are very, very lean when it comes to true talent, I think. The rest of the pieces just have put up decent numbers, decent, any given week fantasy against a bad defense, they're going to give you 30 points. But no, I think I am not a buyer at all in the 2013 playoff Minnesota Vikings. And I don't think this is the time to hit the eject button on them, because there's just way, way, way too big of a talent to spare. But even still, like, we did the thought exercise with Nick last week. Coaching is better for the Giants. A little bit more confidence in the defense for the Giants. If Daniel Jones shows up and gives you, a B or an A effort in his first ever playoff game, which is a stretch because that doesn't happen often, then Giants are winning this one. But I'm kind of hopeful that we have another opportunity to sell this Vikings team before it's all said and done.
Yep, a fickle. All right, let's quickly hit a comment around the Giants. Would you take +3 -110? I probably wouldn't. No. Would you, Drew?
No. Not at -110. No.
Yep.
I think the push probability on this game landing 3 is in the top 2 or 3% of games I've simmed all season long. Like, it's crazy. There's just not enough separation between these teams. Vikings, the way that they play games close. Just in general, Giants being more well coached, being having the better defense. Realistically, they should be competitive here. So then Giants with the injury advantage too, it's worth noting. Like, Vikings aren't coming in healthy.
For sure. All right, let's quickly touch on Cowboys at Bucs. We'll focus on this game more on Monday's show leading up to the game. But Cowboys -2.5 now, -115. The minus on points bet in Tampa, the total is 45.5. Now, the look ahead on this was more in the 4.5 range. And then Cowboys get downgraded again after just the pitiful performance against Enders. Dak goes 14 for 37. It's unbelievable. Are you selling the Cowboys after what they've shown the past month?
I am.
Okay, you're out.
I'm out. If they had, a more stable situation in the, with at the head coach position, I would be more inclined to give them a pass. The idea that Mike McCarthy is going to figure this out, that's a stretch. He's still going to make decisions in this game, close game like this. He's going to make decisions that, put his team at a disadvantage in terms of kicking field goals, punting, going forward, etc. The Dallas Cowboys they are determined to give a portion of their offensive plays to Zeke Elliott against this Tampa Bay run defense. Best of luck. The Cowboys have one game breaker, as far as I can tell you, just because Tony Pollard's dealing with a number of injuries, just hasn't really been the same down the stretch. So their only game breaker really is CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb matches up against Jamel Dean. Jamel Dean I have rated relatively high in terms of coverage grade. The Tampa Bay defense runs a very aggressive scheme. They're going to be blitz heavy in this one. They're going to try to put Dak Prescott under pressure early and often and force a bad Dak performance out of this game. If you remember a lot of other examples of that particular setup, it did not go well for Dak. Last year against the Niners in the playoffs, a great example. This year to start the season against the Bucs, great example. Like, Prescott is not operating well when he's under pressure. Bucs are going to try to put him in that spot. In general, the Bucs defense has a ton of players who are dealing with injuries, and that is the only modicum of pause before firing a nuke on the Bucs to win this game for me. If Vita Vea is not 100%, if Mike Edwards and Carlton Davis aren't going here, all of a sudden you're pretty thin overall with talent on this defense, and Cowboys may be able to find success offensively to put you in a tight spot. The Bucs offense matches up well against the Cowboys, as far as I could tell you. Starting to see some chemistry between Brady and Mike Evans. Certainly the game against the Carolina Panthers should give you some glimmer of hope that the Bucs are going to get into the 20s here from a scoring point standpoint. And that may be all you really need if your defense is doing what they have done every time they've gone up against Prescott in recent memory. So I think this is Bucs still is the right side, although the injury report matters a ton. I would like to see Donovan Smith healthy. I'd like to see Robert Hainsey healthy. I'd like to see Mike Evans get a full complement of snaps in practice this week. Vita Vea matters a ton. As I mentioned, Mike Edwards and Carlton Davis, I also want to see reports that they are trending to play. So if the Bucs are used their bye last week well and are coming out fully healthy, I think they win this game, and Cowboys probably move on from Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, I think the Cowboys are the strangest team in the league now. They're very difficult to get a handle on, between the health, between reading too much or not enough into that Commanders game where they kind of needed it because they still had the NFC East at stake, but they probably knew that they didn't really have the NFC East at stake because the Eagles were 16.5-point favorites against the Giants. I kind of skew towards not weighting that game too much. And I still think the offense is legitimate. The fact that you take out that Commanders game, like they have been, it's been an elite offense the past 2 months, really, since Dak came back. They put up 40 against Minnesota, 28 against the Giants, 54 against, the Colts. They light up. Dak did whatever he wanted against that Eagles defense, putting up 40 on them just 3 weeks ago. So I still believe in the offense, but I think the number 1, 2, 3 defense that it was earlier in the season, I think that's just gone. I think there's just too many guys missing now. I think that they're too banged up at corner. I know there's been a lot of focus, I guess, on Micah Parsons slipping out of the Defensive Player of the Year race. Like, he's not the problem. He's been fine. His pressure rate, everything, that is stable. He's just not gotten the sacks, which can be fluky in a small sample, whereas he's probably overachieving his sack total earlier in the season. But I mean, the secondary just is not an elite unit at the moment. We'll see what happens with Van Der Esch. But I'm not giving up on the Cowboys. And I mean, if they were going up against, I'd say, a better coached team, then I would be a little bit more concerned. But I don't think the Bucs are that well coached either. That's so true. If this 2.5 gets down to -110 on Dallas's side, then I might be interested in Dallas. If it's at 3, I'd probably skew Tampa. So I think the market has arrived in the right place.
Okay. So let me ask you to help me understand something here. These two teams played week 1. Yeah. And obviously there's been a lot of football played between then and now. Tampa was in Dallas and closed 2.5-point favorites. All I can really tell you about the difference between that Tampa team and this Tampa team is that Shaq Barrett is gone, and they have had 18 weeks to find some chemistry that they didn't have from the preseason. Yeah. The difference between that Dallas team and this team is Michael Gallup is back, and then a bunch of guys are kind of banged up. They're missing pieces in the secondary. Like I get it that like the priors needed to be adjusted down for the Bucs when we started the year and up for the Cowboys, but enough to flip to where Cowboys are realistically market favorite in this game? Is that, what is the process that has gotten to this strong of an adjustment between these two teams over the balance of the season?
I think the biggest thing is just every week Tom Brady needing to throw the ball 50 times to get to 280 yards and 1 passing touchdown. Like, I think it's the Bucs offense, which coming into the season, we thought that, Brady was top 5 in MVP odds. The Bucs offense projected as being elite. They just haven't figured it out with the offensive line. Evans has had a really inconsistent season. Godwin's been great. I think Brady's been better than people give him credit for as well. Like, I think the Bucs have the quarterback advantage in this matchup, which didn't look like it would be the case 2 months ago. And I guess what this game really hinges on is that Dak Prescott has not been good this season.
Yeah.
And he's had flashes where he was amazing against the Eagles, outside of the pick six. That wasn't good. But everything else outside of the pick six.
Take away the bad plays, he was unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, you see it with Dak, like the 3rd and 30 pass to T.Y. Hilton. When he's on, he is as good as it gets. But, he's the 21st ranked quarterback by PFF grade this season, Dak Prescott. He's been dreadful under pressure. But I do think what this game will largely hinge on is that the Bucs don't have any pass rush at all without Shaq Barrett. They cannot get pressure with 4. They're going to have to blitz. And so it's probably going to, it'll hinge on whether Dak's throwing deep bombs to T.Y. Hilton against the blitz and connecting, or whether he's throwing pick sixes to Jamel Dean. So one that we'll get more into on Monday. But let's talk about Super Bowl MVP. But before we do, download the RotoWorld app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in the App Store today. Now, Super Bowl MVP is always a very fun market, particularly for the playoffs. Generally, by the time the Super Bowl comes around, the market is adjusted. But now I think there's always value. And I think the value is that the market either doesn't weight quarterback win equity enough, which I think is the case with Patrick Mahomes every single season. And sometimes it weights it way too much, which I think it's doing with Brock Purdy at the moment. So what is your kind of overall read on this market?
Stay away from the AFC quarterbacks. They have to play each other to get to the Super Bowl. So if you want to capture equity in this market, I think you are trying to prey on the fact that the current bracket is imbalanced. The good teams are all on one side, which means that if you're making a bet and you were trying to capture equity, you're trying to pick off a player who realistically is going to shorten significantly on the NFC winning team. That could, and it's easy to rule some teams out. I don't think the Seahawks have a realistic chance to win the NFC. I don't think the Giants have a realistic chance to win the NFC. I don't think the Vikings have a realistic chance to win the NFC. We have already ruled out 3 of the 7 teams, which means you are really shopping prices now between 4 teams. And I think you go through the exercise then of who's the most likely to shorten for any given team among those 4. And that's the Eagles, the Niners, the Cowboys, and the Bucs. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but the obvious answer is Tom Brady shouldn't be 30-1. If Tom Brady and the Bucs get to the Super Bowl, what is his price going to be for MVP? Plus 150, plus 200? I mean, whatever. It's going to be the same as the Bucs money line in that spot, right? So I think the only kind of obvious answer is if the Bucs get there, Brady's going to be sort of the outsized recipient of the equity of MVP, and so that's probably where you want to shoot and try to capture among the 4 teams that I think realistically could get there. There are too many candidates, too much credit to share for the Cowboys. And as we just covered, I'm not a Prescott believer anyway. There are too many candidates on the Eagles, just a very talented team. Hurts is rightfully the guy that you would expect to get the lion's share of the credit there, but great receivers on that team, meaningfully, solid, contributors all over that roster. So I think the Eagles are a stay away just because of how many, people could be considered. And then when it comes to the Niners, I agree with you that Purdy is insanely priced at 12-1. If the Niners win the Super Bowl, if they get there and win the Super Bowl, and it's because of Purdy, that will be the upset of the millennium and not worth getting a 12-1 price on. It's going to be because of their defense. It's going to be someone on the defense, and or Christian McCaffrey is going to be, kind of a standout blow up sort of down the stretch sort of, player for them. So I would look for some of the not quarterbacks on the Niners or Brady in this market, and or just stay away entirely. Where are you at?
Yeah, I said I disagree with one part on the AFC, and that I think that Mahomes, where he's plus 425 to win MVP, and the Chiefs are plus 325 to win the Super Bowl. And so, if you think that Patrick Mahomes is more than an 80.6% chance to win MVP if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, then that's a good bet. And I do think he's more than that. I think he's above 90% in equity. But yeah, I agree with Allen and Burrow. I wouldn't necessarily go there because I don't believe in the Super Bowl prices of those teams being value, whereas I think the Chiefs as the 1 seed still are. Yeah, I like the look on Brady. I think to me, the most interesting team in the market is San Francisco because they're the best blend of being relatively short to win the Super Bowl and then also having a quarterback who I think is less than a 50% chance to win MVP. So that's where value presents itself. So I think McCaffrey is probably like a 20 to 25% win equity for the 49ers if they win the Super Bowl. But to me, the two interesting guys are Nick Bosa and George Kittle, who are available at huge prices, where I think they're both around 8 to 10% win equity. And if people agree with that, then their prices in the market are value, well north of, basically by that estimation, anything north of 60 to 1 is a bet on those guys, and those prices are available. Kittle has caught multiple touchdown passes 3 of the past 4 games. If you go back through the game logs, I think that of the 15 games he was healthy, Nick Bosa would have won MVP of those regular season games definitely twice, and there are another 2 games where he really would have had a case. So if you're getting to 4 out of 15 and the odds are implying that he's more like a 1 in 20, then that doesn't really add up necessarily, particularly when you look at Brock Purdy on the other side. So I think those are the interesting guys in this market. So I would play Mahomes, Bosa, Kittle.
Mm-hmm. Just for the record, the coach is not eligible for Super Bowl MVP, right?
Well, yeah, Kyle Shanahan.
Probably not going to give it to Shanahan.
Yeah, he's in the discussion. Let's not rule out the go. I'm a little bit worried that Kyle Shanahan's going to win NBA MVP over Nick.
He's got that Cooper Cup whiff to him in terms of just stealing all the awards this year, right? Best actor. Yeah.
We've got a quick comment here, I believe on AJ Brown. Hey guys, it's from Aaron Campbell. I might just be chasing another cup bet, but does AJ Brown feel a little big at 50 to 1? Of the 4 elite quarterbacks, it feels like Hurts might be the most realistic to be outplayed by their own wide receiver. Yeah, I definitely think there's an angle in terms of fading Hurts in the market. Look, he's much more of a chance than Brock Purdy, for instance. Hurts probably going to finish 2nd or 3rd in MVP. And just with how bad he looked against the Giants as well, maybe he's not 100% healthy. I'd have to break down the win equity, but I would suggest that off the top of my head, Hurts is like a 60% chance. If the Eagles win, I'd make him favorite over the field, maybe a little bit bigger. That remaining 40%. And if you think that, right now the Eagles price to win the Super Bowl is plus 475, so plus 520 fair, that type of range. And so, yeah, I think that AJ Brown around 50 to 1, that sounds about right. What do you think, Drew?
Yeah, the Eagles are a really fun conversation to have independently, because if they get to the Super Bowl, I have a very different price portfolio for her, price distribution for Hurts if he is a dog versus if it's expected to be a 50-50 kind of game. If he is a 3 or 4 point dog to the likes of the Chiefs or the Bills and the Eagles win, then Hurts should be like 70-80% MVP share, right? If it's a 50-50-ish game to the likes of like the Bengals, or if they're even favored over somebody like the Jags, then you're probably talking about, Hurts, that someone can steal, right? Like some standout performer from the Eagles could steal. And then Hurts is maybe only like 50%. So I think it's a little bit opponent dependent, what Hurts's price ought to be, because again, if they get the upset, I think he'll be sort of assumed as the reason why. And if they just take care of business against a team that they're expected to beat, then someone could steal. Does that make sense? Yeah.
And I think as well, there's an element of, if they're going to win, if an Eagle is going to win Super Bowl MVP, they're most likely leading the Super Bowl in the second half. And Sirianni has shown that he will run the ball a ton in the second half. But again, obviously you can win playing from behind and throwing as well. So I think 50 to 1 is probably about right for AJ Brown. Top of my head, I'd say he's like around 10% win equity for the Eagles. That type, definitely the highest among the skill position players. But yeah, I think Miles Sanders is probably interesting. It's a long shot just because of the nature of how they run the ball in the second half. All right, Drew, we are done. Don't forget to check out NBCSportsEdge.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks for those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to subscribe and rate us. We'll be back tomorrow.